Let me ask you a question. What's the most intimidating thing a person can carry? It's not muscles, it's not money, it's not status. It's a mind that cannot be broken. Because when your mind is strong, people feel it before you even speak. They see it in your eyes, they sense it in your presence, and it unsettles them because deep down, they know they can't control you. We live in a world where most people are slaves, not to chains, but to their own thoughts, to fear, to the opinions of others. They break under pressure, they crumble when criticized, they run when life gets tough. But then there are a rare few, who develop such an unshakable inner world that nothing outside of them can touch it. Those are the people who lead, who inspire, who dominate, and who scare everyone that doubts them. And here's the truth. You can build that kind of mind. It's not a gift. It's not reserved for the chosen few. It's a choice. It's a muscle. It's a fire that you ignite and feed every single day until your strength becomes unbreakable. So if you're tired of being controlled by fear, if you're done with playing small, if you're ready to develop a mental power that intimidates the world, not because you're arrogant, but because you're unstoppable, then listen closely. Because by the end of this talk, you'll know exactly how to build a mind so strong, it scares everyone around you, control your inner world before the outer world controls you. That's where it all begins. Every single thing you want in life, every dream you're chasing, every battle you're fighting, it all starts in your mind. The truth is, most people think their circumstances shape their life. They think it's the economy, their past, their environment, their relationships, even just luck. But let me tell you something, it's never what's happening around you that defines you, it's always what's happening inside you. You see, the strongest people you've ever admired didn't get there because life handed them the perfect conditions. They got there because they trained themselves to master their inner state, no matter what the outer world threw at them. That's the difference. Weak minds let the outside dictate their inside. Strong minds dictate their inside, and in doing so, they bend the outside to their will. Think about it. You know someone who wakes up in the morning, small problem happens, a flat tire, an email they didn't like, maybe someone said something negative, and suddenly their entire day collapses. They're frustrated, they're anxious, they're snapping at people, and by noon, they've already given up on their goals. Why? Because they handed control of their inner world to the outer world. Their emotions became a reaction instead of a decision. Now let's flip the script. Imagine a person who wakes up to the same flat tire, the same negative comment, the same difficult day. But instead of letting it ruin them, they smile. They see it as a test. They don't hand over the keys of their emotions to anyone or anything. They say, I own my state. I choose how I feel. I decide how I show up. That's the person who wins. That's the person who scares people, not because they're mean, not because they're aggressive, but because nothing rattles them. You can't shake them. You can't break them. When you realize that kind of control is possible, it changes everything. The question is, how do you get there? Because it's not about pretending problems don't exist. It's not about faking positivity. It's about conditioning your mind daily to take control of your focus, your emotions, and your meaning. Every event in life is neutral until you give it meaning. Every challenge, every obstacle, every setback, you are the one who decides whether it destroys you or builds you. And that decision is the foundation of mental strength. Think about the people who inspire you most. They didn't live perfect lives. Many of them lived through storms, failures, rejections, heartbreaks, but how they developed a mindset that said, I will not let this define me. I will not let this break me. I am bigger than my circumstances. I am the master of my inner world. And once you start living like that, you walk differently, you talk differently, and people feel a power in you that they can't quite explain. That's when you become untouchable. Most people live in reaction mode. They let the news dictate their mood. They let social media dictate their worth. They let other people's words dictate their identity. But when you build a strong mind, you stop being a reactor and start being a creator. You stop asking, what's happening to me? And you start declaring, this is happening for me. And once you make that shift, the outer world no longer controls your destiny. You do. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not easy at first. Your brain is designed to survive, not to thrive. It's wired to look for danger, to react, to protect. That's why so many people live in fear, stress, and doubt. But the strongest minds rewire that conditioning. They practice. They train. They remind themselves every single day, I decide what this means. I decide how I feel. I decide who I become. And over time, that repetition builds a fortress inside you that no storm can knock down. Imagine walking into a room where everyone else is stressed, panicked, overwhelmed, and you're calm. Imagine facing setbacks that would make most people quit, and you're centered, focused, ready to adapt. Imagine hearing criticism, insults, negativity, and instead of being crushed, you smile because you know who you are and nothing they say can touch that. That's what it means to control your inner world. And that's why it scares people, because they can't control someone who controls themselves. You want power. That's real power. It's not about dominating others. It's about dominating yourself, because when you can command your thoughts, your emotions, your focus, you automatically rise above everyone who can't. And the truth is, most people can't. Most people are fragile, easily offended, easily broken. But when you stand firm in your inner world, you become the person who's unshakable. And people respect that, people fear that, people are drawn to that. And here's the beauty of it. Once you take control inside, you gain control outside. When you own your focus, your emotions, your energy, you show up differently. Opportunities open up. People trust you more. Challenges become fuel instead of walls. Life bends to the person who refuses to be bent by it. So let me leave you with this. The world doesn't need another person who crumbles under pressure. It doesn't need another person who lives as a victim of their circumstances. The world needs you strong. It needs you unshakable. It needs you to take full command of your inner world so that you can shape the outer one. Because when you build that kind of mind, not only will you rise, you'll scare everyone who ever doubted you. Turn pain into power, not excuses. That's the dividing line between people who live small and people who rise into greatness. Every single one of us has faced pain. Pain from loss, pain from failure, pain from rejection, pain from betrayal, pain from our own mistakes. It's the one thing every human shares. But here's the truth. Pain will either become the anchor that keeps you chained down or the fuel that launches you forward. And the choice is yours every single time. Most people waste their pain. They use it as a reason to shrink, as an excuse to stop trying, as justification for why they can't have the life they want. They say, I went through this, so I can't succeed. Or, because they hurt me, never trust again. They carry their pain like a badge, but in reality, it becomes their cage. And that cage is strong, because the more you tell yourself the story of your pain as a limitation, the more it locks you in. Then there are people who make a different choice. They take the same pain, the same heartbreak, the same difficulty, and instead of saying, this is why I can't, they say, this is why I must. Instead of letting it weaken them, they decide it will harden them, sharpen them, and give them the edge that others don't have. They find strength in the suffering. They find fire in the frustration. They find purpose in the wounds. That's how pain becomes power. Think about it. Every breakthrough in your life has come through some form of struggle. Growth never happens in comfort. Muscles don't grow without resistance. Diamonds aren't formed without pressure. Steel isn't strong without fire. So why do we expect our minds and our lives to be different? If you avoid pain, you avoid power. If you run from pain, you run from growth. The strongest people are not the ones who had no pain. They're the ones who decided to transform it. The difference lies in the meaning you attach to it. Two people can experience the same hardship. One becomes bitter, the other becomes unstoppable. One lets it break their spirit, the other lets it fuel their mission. It's not the pain itself, it's what you decide to do with it. And once you realize that, you start to look at challenges differently. You start to ask, how can I use this? How can this make me better? How can I turn this wound into a weapon? Because here's the thing, pain is energy and energy never disappears, it only transfers. You can let that energy eat you alive, or you can channel it into something extraordinary. Some of the most successful people on the planet came from broken homes, from poverty, from abandonment, from abuse. They took all that pain, and instead of letting it justify their weakness, they turned it into relentless drive. They said, because I suffered, I won't let others suffer. Because I know what it's like to lose, I refuse to quit. Because I was underestimated, I'll prove what's possible. That's the transformation. Pain becomes the greatest motivator if you let it. Here's what most don't realize. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. You can't avoid the losses, the setbacks, the disappointments. That's life. But suffering, the ongoing replay of pain, the story you tell yourself that chains you to it, that's a choice. And the way out of suffering is simply give your pain a purpose. If you can assign meaning to it that serves you, suffering dissolves and strength takes its place. Let me give you a picture. Imagine you're carrying a heavy weight up a hill. If you tell yourself, this is pointless, this is unfair, why me? The weight crushes you. You feel resentment, fatigue, and eventually you give up. But if you tell yourself, carrying this because I'm building strength, because I'm training for the fight of my life, because this will prepare me for something greater, suddenly the weight becomes your ally. Same pain, different meaning, completely different outcome. That's the secret. Shift the meaning and you shift the power. Now let's get real. There are times pain will knock you down so hard you don't even want to get back up. Times when life hits you in a way that feels unfair, cruel, maybe even unbearable. And in that moment, you'll have a voice inside saying, stay down, quit, this is too much. And if you listen, that becomes the moment that defines you in weakness. But if instead you decide, this is the test that will prove me, this is the fire that will forge me, this is the pain I'll use to push myself further than I ever imagined, that becomes the moment that defines you in strength. And let me tell you something, when people see that in you, they see that you don't just survive pain, but thrive through it. It scares them because most people are controlled by pain. And when they meet someone who controls pain, who uses it, who turns it into fuel, they can't understand it. It makes them uncomfortable because it reminds them of the excuses they've been living with. And that's when they either envy you or follow you. Either way, your strength becomes undeniable. Pain will visit you whether you invite it or not. It will come in the form of challenges, failures, heartbreaks, losses. You don't get to choose whether or not it comes, but you always get to choose what you do with it. You can bury yourself in it, or you can build yourself with it. You can use it as a wall, or you can use it as a foundation. You can let it chain you, or you can let it unleash you. So when pain shows up, and it will, don't ask, why me? Ask, what now? What can I make of this? How can I use this to become stronger, wiser, more relentless? Because when you live that way, pain becomes your greatest ally. And once you've mastered that, once you've proven to yourself that no pain can stop you, that's when you become untouchable. That's when you stop being afraid of what might come, because you know no matter what comes, you'll use it. That's when people look at you differently because they see you're not like everyone else. You don't run from pain, you run through it. And that's when your mind becomes terrifying to those who still let pain hold them back. Discipline is freedom. Most people don't see it that way because they've been conditioned to think discipline is some kind of punishment, a restriction, a burden. They see it as a cage that takes away comfort, spontaneity, or pleasure. But the truth is, people who lack discipline are the ones living inside a cage. They're trapped by their moods, their impulses, their weaknesses. They're prisoners of laziness, procrastination, and distraction. Discipline isn't the cage. Discipline is the key that unlocks the door and sets you free. Think about it. A person who doesn't control their habits has no freedom. If they don't feel motivated, they don't act. If they're tired, they quit. They're tempted, they give in. Their life is dictated by emotions and circumstances, not by choice. That's not freedom, that's slavery. But the disciplined person is free because they're not ruled by how they feel in the moment. They decide what must be done. They do it whether they feel like it or not. And that's why they rise above. That's why they achieve what others only dream about. A strong mind is impossible without discipline. You can't build resilience, strength, power if your actions depend on convenience. Discipline is the muscle that holds everything together. And like any muscle, it's built through repetition, through daily practice, through doing the things you don't want to do until they become second nature. That's where real strength is born. The problem is most people wait for the perfect mood, the perfect environment, the perfect timing. They wait until they feel ready. And because that day never comes, they never move. Discipline is the opposite of waiting. Discipline says, I don't care if I'm tired. I don't care if I'm scared. I don't care if it's uncomfortable. I'm doing it anyway. That decision, repeated over and over again, creates a kind of power that can't be shaken. Look at anyone who's achieved greatness in any field. Athletes, leaders, creators, innovators. None of them got there by chance. They got there because they mastered themselves. They trained when no one was watching. They pushed when no one was cheering. They stayed consistent long after the excitement wore off. And that's the difference. Discipline doesn't give you instant results. It gives you compound results. It stacks over time until one day the person who stayed disciplined is standing on a mountain while everyone else is still stuck at the base making excuses. And let's be real, it's not glamorous. Discipline isn't about big moments. It's about the small, boring, unsexy choices you make daily. Waking up early when you want to sleep in, putting in the reps when you'd rather rest, saying no to temptations that feel good in the moment but steal from your future. These aren't heroic moments, but when you stack enough of them, they create a life that feels almost superhuman. The undisciplined mind always looks for comfort. But comfort is a trap. It makes you soft. It makes you weak. It robs you of the fire you need to grow. The disciplined mind, on the other hand, seeks growth even when it's uncomfortable. It does what is necessary instead of what is easy. That's why it scares people, because most people can't understand how someone can push themselves so consistently, so relentlessly. It makes them uneasy because it forces them to confront their own lack of discipline. Discipline isn't about perfection. It's about consistency. You will fail, you will slip, you will have days where you fall short. That's part of the process. But the disciplined person doesn't stay down. They don't let one failure become an identity. They get up, they reset, and they keep moving. Discipline isn't about never falling. It's about never staying on the ground. One of the greatest lies people believe is that motivation is enough. Motivation is a spark, but it burns out fast. Discipline is the engine that keeps going long after the spark is gone. You'll have days when motivation isn't there. You'll have days when the fire feels dim. But discipline doesn't care about feelings. Discipline is a decision you make in advance. No matter what, I show up. No matter how I feel, I execute. That's when your life changes. And here's the paradox. The more discipline you build, the more freedom you gain. Freedom from fear because you trust yourself to do what's required. Freedom from regret because you know you gave your best. Freedom from weakness because every time you push past resistance, you grow stronger. The disciplined person walks through life with a power others don't understand because they've proven to themselves again and again that they can be counted on. And when you can count on yourself, you don't fear anything. Think about how many people talk about dreams but never realize them. It's not because they weren't capable. It's not because the opportunity wasn't there. It's because when the work showed up, they didn't. They lacked the discipline to keep moving when it got hard. And if you want to separate yourself from the majority, that's all it takes. Not talent, not luck, not some rare gift, just relentless daily discipline. Every time you resist the urge to quit, every time you push through the excuses, every time you choose growth over comfort, you're wiring your mind for strength. You're teaching yourself that you're in control, not your impulses. And over time, that rewires your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and you start seeing yourself as someone who executes. That shift in identity changes everything. And when people encounter you, they feel it. They see it in your actions. They sense it in your presence. Discipline radiates strength. It communicates without words that you're not ordinary. It's intimidating because it's rare. Most people want the results of discipline without the price of discipline. But when they see someone who has paid that price, lives it daily, they can't help but respect it, even if it scares them. If you truly want to build a mind that can't be broken, you must embrace discipline not as something you do, but as something you are. It's not a task on a checklist. It's an identity you embody. And once you live that way, nothing can stop you, not fatigue, not setbacks, not criticism. Because when you've built discipline in your very being, you've built a mind that's unstoppable. That's why a disciplined mind scares people, because it shows them what's possible when excuses die and commitment takes over. Discipline isn't punishment. Discipline is freedom. Detach from opinions and seek only truth. That's one of the most powerful decisions you'll ever make if you want to build a mind that can't be broken. Because the reality is, most people are not living their own lives. They're living the life that others expect of them. They're chasing approval, avoiding criticism, constantly trying to fit into some invisible standard set by people who don't even truly know them. And as long as you're enslaved to opinions, you'll never know freedom. From the moment we're kids, we're trained to look outward for validation, gold stars, likes, comments, applause. Our sense of worth gets tied to someone else's approval. And the danger is that conditioning doesn't go away just because we grow older. Most adults are still operating like children, waiting for permission to feel good about themselves. If people clap, they feel proud. If people criticize, they collapse. But when your state of mind is chained to opinions, you've given your power away. You're not living, you're performing. And performing is exhausting. Here's the truth: no matter what you do, someone will always have something to say. You could live the safest, most careful life, and people will still find a way to judge you. You could aim high and they'll say you're arrogant. You could play small and they'll say you're wasting your potential. You could work hard and they'll call you obsessed. You could rest and they'll call you lazy. You cannot win the game of pleasing people because the rules are designed for you to lose. So the only way to win is to stop playing that game altogether. When you detach from opinions, something shifts inside of you. You stop being reactive. You stop bending yourself to fit into boxes that were never meant for you. Instead, you align with truth, your truth. You start asking, what's real for me? What matters to me? What's the standard I'm going to live by, regardless of who claps or who criticizes? And the moment you make that shift, you step into real power. Now, I'm not saying you ignore feedback. There's wisdom in listening, in learning, in considering other perspectives. There's a difference between feedback and opinion. Feedback is information. It's a tool you can use if it aligns with your truth. Opinion, on the other hand, is just noise often coming from people who haven't done what you're trying to do. People projecting their fears, their insecurities, their limitations onto you. And if you let their noise become your compass, you'll live their life instead of yours. A strong mind scares people because it doesn't bend to that noise. It stands firm in what it knows to be true. It's not swayed by applause. It's not shaken by criticism. That kind of mind is unshakable, and it intimidates people who have spent their entire lives being controlled by what others think. It reminds them that they've been living small, and that's uncomfortable. But here's the beauty. You weren't born to live small. You weren't born to dim your light just to make others comfortable. You were born to live aligned with truth. Detachment doesn't mean arrogance. It doesn't mean you don't care about people. It means you care more about truth than about popularity. It means you care more about living authentically than living comfortably. It means your self-worth is not up for negotiation, depending on the opinions of others. And when you get to that place, the peace you feel is unmatched. You no longer ride the emotional roller coaster of approval and rejection. You live steady, grounded, focused. Think of how much energy people waste worrying about what others think. Energy spent editing themselves, censoring their dreams, doubting their abilities because they fear being judged. That's energy that could have built a business, healed a relationship, created art, written books, transformed lives, all that potential wasted, all because of opinions that don't even matter in the end. When you detach, you reclaim that energy, you direct it toward your growth, your mission, vision. That's when momentum builds. And it's not easy because opinions are everywhere. We're drowning in them on social media and conversations at work, even in our own homes. But the discipline of detachment is like a shield. You hear the words, but they don't pierce you. You see the judgments, but they don't steer you. You stand tall because you know where you're going and why you're going there. That's the kind of strength that separates leaders from followers. The truth is, most of the people who criticize you will forget about you tomorrow. Their opinions are fleeting, temporary, often rooted in their own struggles. Yet too many people let those opinions shape their permanent identity. Isn't it crazy to let a passing comment decide the course of your life? The strong mind doesn't allow that. It recognizes opinions for what they are, background noise. And it tunes into the only frequency that matters, truth. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop chasing approval is the moment you gain respect. People may not admit it, but deep down they admire those who refuse to be swayed. They admire those who stand firmly in their own skin, unapologetic, authentic, aligned. It may scare them at first. Eventually it inspires them because people crave that kind of freedom. They crave the courage to stop caring about opinions and start living for truth. So if you want to build a strong mind, you have to stop asking, will they think? And start asking, what's true for me? Stop chasing likes and start chasing alignment. Stop worrying about who's clapping and start focusing on whether you're living by your highest standard. Because at the end of the day, opinions fade, but truth lasts. Detach from opinions, seek only truth, and you will build a mind so steady, so authentic, so unshakable, nothing can shake you, and that's what truly scares people. Strength is not born in comfort. It's forged in the moments when you choose to do the hard things over and over again until your mind adapts and transforms. Repetition of hard things, that's the secret. Not one-time bursts of courage, not occasional moments of grit, but the relentless daily decision to lean into difficulty, to push past what feels easy, to embrace what most people avoid. That is how mental toughness is built. And when you build it, you develop an edge that makes people pause because they can sense you're not like everyone else. Most people want strength, but they don't want the process. They want resilience without resistance. They want confidence without challenge. They want mastery without repetition. But that's not how life works. Look at anyone who has real strength, and you'll see one thing in common. They did the hard things not once, but countless times until the very act of struggle became normal for them. What breaks others no longer breaks them because they've conditioned themselves to thrive where others quit. Your brain is like a muscle. It adapts to whatever you repeatedly feed it. If you feed it excuses, it becomes weak. If you feed it comfort, it becomes soft. But if you feed it discipline, if you feed it challenges, if you feed it the willingness to do what's hard when every part of you wants to quit, it becomes powerful. It rewires itself to see obstacles not as threats, but as opportunities. That's the essence of toughness, training your mind to stay firm where others fold. And let's be clear, it doesn't have to be massive things at first. Toughness isn't built by waiting for life's biggest battles. It's built in the small, daily choices. Waking up earlier than you want to. Finishing the set when your body is screaming to stop. Speaking the truth when silence would be safer. Saying no to distractions when temptation whispers in your ear. Each time you choose the harder path, you're putting another brick in the foundation of your mind. One brick doesn't make a fortress, but stack enough of them consistently and you'll have walls that nothing can penetrate. Makes this intimidating to others is that most people quit at the first sign of discomfort. They want shortcuts, hacks, easy paths. So when they see someone who willingly embraces difficulty, who runs toward the challenge instead of away from it, it unsettles them. It forces them to question themselves, to face the reality that maybe they've been living too comfortably. Maybe they've been choosing easy over growth. And that realization makes them uncomfortable in your presence because your strength exposes their weakness. But here's the beauty of repetition. It doesn't just build resilience, it builds certainty. The more you train yourself to face challenges, the more you prove to yourself that you can handle them. That certainty is powerful. It gives you a quiet confidence that doesn't need to be announced because it radiates. You walk into situations knowing you can endure because you've endured 1,000 times before. That's when people sense something different in you. They see you as someone they can't easily shake, someone they can't easily break. Most people overestimate what they can do once and underestimate what they can do consistently. They think one grand gesture, one burst of effort, one moment of bravery will change their life. But real transformation doesn't happen that way. It's not one moment that shapes you. It's the accumulation of thousands of moments, thousands of choices to do the hard thing when no one's watching. That's where greatness comes from. And repetition has another hidden gift. It desensitizes fear. The first time you face something hard, your mind screams at you to stop. Fear grips you, doubt rises, and everything in you looks for a way out. But the 10th time, the 100th time, what used to terrify you becomes normal. What used to overwhelm you becomes routine. That's the power of repetition. It shrinks fear until it has no control over you anymore. When you understand this, you stop seeing struggle as punishment and start seeing it as training. Every challenge becomes a rep. Every obstacle becomes practice. With every rep, your mind grows stronger, your resilience grows deeper, your capacity grows wider. You don't avoid the hard things anymore. You seek them because you know they're shaping you into someone unshakable. And the truth is, life will give you hard things whether you want them or not. Pain, setbacks, losses, rejection, they're guaranteed. You don't get to control whether they come, but you do get to control how prepared you are when they arrive. If you've trained your mind through repetition, those moments don't destroy you. They reveal your strength. But if you've avoided the hard things your whole life, those moments expose your fragility. That's the difference between those who rise and those who crumble. This is why it's so important to condition yourself intentionally. Don't just wait for challenges to show up. Create them. Push yourself into environments that stretch you. Set standards higher than what feels comfortable. Hold yourself accountable to actions that most people would find unbearable. Every time you do, you're rehearsing strength, you're rehearsing resilience, you're rehearsing the mindset of someone who cannot be broken. And here's what happens after enough repetition, the hard things stop feeling hard. You begin to crave the challenge. You develop an identity around it. You stop being someone who dabbles and start being someone who endures. And that identity becomes unshakable. Once you see yourself as the kind of person who always does the hard thing, quitting no longer feels like an option. That's when you've crossed the line into true mental toughness. And make no mistake, this scares people. Because most people avoid difficulty, they admire it from a distance but fear it up close. They encounter someone who's trained themselves to embrace struggle, who's hardened their mind through endless repetition. It disrupts their comfort. They can't relate to it, and that makes them uneasy. But it also makes them respect you, because deep down they know that's the strength they wish they had. So don't run from hard things. Don't look for the easy road. Embrace the path that tests you, that stretches you, that demands more from you than you think you have. Repeat it until the very act of struggle feels like home. Because in that repetition lies the secret to a mind that intimidates, inspires, and endures. Repetition of hard things builds a mind no one can break. A strong mind is dangerous because it's driven by growth, not by approval. Most people live their lives chasing the applause, chasing validation, chasing the feeling that others are impressed with them. They measure their progress by whether people clap or criticize, by whether they're accepted or rejected. And in doing so, they trap themselves in a cycle that keeps them small, because when your actions are driven by approval, you can only go as far as others are comfortable with you going. But when you shift your focus to growth instead of approval, everything changes. That's when you stop playing small. That's when you stop holding back. And that's when you begin to scare people, because you're no longer limited by their opinions. The truth is, growth is uncomfortable, both for you and for the people around you. When you grow, you change. That threatens the identity others have built for you. Maybe they liked you better when you played it safe, when you stayed predictable, when you didn't challenge the way things are. The moment you decide to grow, you disrupt the story people tell about you. And not everyone will celebrate that. Some will criticize you, some will distance themselves, some will even try to pull you back down to the level you've outgrown. If you're living for approval, that's where you'll break. But if you're living for growth, you'll keep moving forward no matter who claps and no matter who leaves. Growth requires sacrifice. You cannot become the person you're meant to be while clinging to the approval of everyone else. You cannot stay liked by everyone and still rise, because growth means outgrowing environments, mindsets, and sometimes even people. That's where strength comes in. You must decide what matters more to you, being liked or becoming strong. Most people choose to be liked, and that's why they stay average. The few who choose growth, even when it costs them approval. The ones who create lives that others can only dream about. And here's the paradox: when you stop chasing approval and start chasing growth, eventually you gain a deeper form of respect. People may not understand you at first. They may even resist you. Time, they can't help but admire someone who refuses to compromise their potential. That kind of commitment to growth commands attention. It commands influence. It commands a level of authority that approval chasers will never have. Reason this scares people is because it exposes something they don't want to face. When you prioritize growth, you hold up a mirror to those who are prioritizing comfort. Your actions say, there's more possible, and that threatens their excuses. It unsettles them because it shows them that the ceiling they thought was permanent was really just self-imposed. And when people are confronted with that truth, they either step up with you or they try to pull you back. But either way, growth has impact. Focusing on growth also requires humility, because growth means admitting you don't know it all, admitting you can do better, admitting there's another level. Approval seekers hate this because they want to look perfect. They want to appear like they've got it all together. But growth seekers embrace the fact that they're a work in progress. They welcome challenges, they welcome correction, they welcome the process of becoming more. That willingness to keep evolving is what gives them their strength. And growth isn't always flashy. It doesn't always look like big leaps. Often it looks like small, consistent steps day after day, pushing yourself a little further, stretching yourself a little more. Growth is subtle in the moment, but undeniable over time. It compounds, it builds, it transforms you from the inside out. And when people suddenly see the results of years of growth stacked together, feels overwhelming to them. They don't see the daily grind, the sacrifices, the battles you fought with yourself. All they see is the strength you now carry, and it intimidates them. One of the greatest traps is to confuse approval with progress. Just because people like what you're doing doesn't mean you're growing. Sometimes the very thing you need to do for your growth is the thing that will disappoint others. Sometimes the move that's best for your future is the one that people won't understand. If you let that stop you, you'll live in circles, repeating the same year over and over again while calling it a life. But if you choose growth, you break those cycles. You move forward, you evolve into the person you were meant to be. And here's what's important: growth doesn't just benefit you, it benefits everyone around you. When you grow stronger, you can lift others. When you grow wiser, you can guide others. When you grow more resilient, you can inspire others. Approval is selfish. It's about getting others to make you feel good. Growth is selfless. It's about becoming someone who creates value, someone who contributes, someone who leaves a mark. And deep down, that's what you're here for. Not to collect applause, but to create impact. When you make growth the priority, you live with a different kind of energy. You stop wasting time on petty judgments, worrying about who's watching, on performing for the crowd. Instead, you put your energy into becoming sharper, stronger, better. And that kind of energy radiates. People can feel it. They may not even be able to explain it, but they sense that you're moving differently. And that movement commands attention, not because you asked for it, but because you earned it. So if you want to build a mind that scares people, stop asking, what will they think of me? And start asking, can I grow today? Stop living for likes and start living for progress. Stop shaping your identity around applause and start shaping it around who you're becoming. Because when you commit to growth over approval, you separate yourself from the crowd. You rise above the noise. You become a force that cannot be ignored. Growth over approval, that's the choice that builds a mind people respect, people fear, and people can never control.